Hello everybody, this is Mr. Rob and welcome back to another episode of the South Carolina Gamecocks Dynasty here on EA Sports College Football 25. We're through on the other side of an off season and we've reached the preseason for 2030, a new decade we have reached as this is year 7 of this dynasty. So if we jump into the actual season, we have the preseason to get through. We'll take a look at the roster, preview it a little bit, as well as looking at the top 25, which you can see we are number 21. And then also take a look around the country at some of the other teams to look out for this season before revealing the schedule that we will face this year. So if you're excited for this one, make sure you drop a like and you subscribe down below, especially if you want more Dynasty Mode content, as we're probably in the penultimate season of this dynasty. I think it's going to go about 8 years. So this is the next to last one. So let's not waste any more time. We'll jump into it. South Carolina's coming off a 9-4 season where we won in the Gator Bowl against NC State. It's not a bad season. We tied our high in wins, but we want more. So we'll see if we can do it this season. We have a pretty solid team. So let's meet the guys. Here's a look at the roster going into the 2030 season. As you can see, we're a 90 overall, 89 on offense, 91 defense. I think that's pretty, generous considering I think some of the talent or some of the players that we are missing. We'll start off at quarterback, though, of course, with Shaquille Brock, the redshirt sophomore who started last year as a freshman and was pretty awesome, I would say, last year, all things considered. 3,700 yards, 32 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Those yards and touchdowns are a Gamecock record in a season for a quarterback. And I think Brock was really good. He had one bad game against Clemson where he threw 5 interceptions. Then he had like a 6-minute stretch against App State where he threw 3. So if you take out those 2 moments, he only threw 4 interceptions the rest of the year. So I think Brock obviously is the undisputed quarterback of this team, and he should get better as a sophomore. He will be who the offense runs through because at halfback, we're down our top 2. Wade Mann, who's been the lifeblood of the offense for the past 3 seasons, has gone to the NFL draft. He was a second-round pick. And then Monty Sora graduated. So now it's up to redshirt junior Sonny Dora from Clover, South Carolina to get his chance, a 3-star recruit. He's a receiving back, and he's only had limited touches this year, in his career. 2 carries last year for 20 yards, 1 catch for 6, only 3 total touches. So we'll have to see what Sonny Dora can do. He's got big shoes to fill in the form of Wade Mann. We'll try to be a little bit more selective in the ground game, not probably rely as much on it. There's also Keenan Todia, the redshirt freshman, who could get some carries, as well as Braden Goodman. So a pretty thin group here at halfback, only 3 on roster. We'll see what they can do. Now, on the receiving core, we also were in some graduations as we had our top 3 receivers leave last year. Carl Saban got drafted in the 6th round. He was a senior anyway. And then we also lost Amari Allgaier and Ted Martino. So our top 3 receivers are gone. The top guy returning is redshirt sophomore Juan Gallegos from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He built quite the connection early with Shaquille Brock, so that should help. But he'll have a chance to be the number 1 this year. 42 catches last year, 619 yards, 7 touchdowns. He got off to a hot start, wasn't as effective down the stretch, but that chemistry with Brock, I think, will help. And it's also his roommate, so hopefully the Brock-Gallegos connection could thrive once more this season. I expect him to step in as that downfield threat guy that's been a staple of our offense all the way back to year number 1 when we had Nick Harbor. Now behind him at number 2 is Vernon Ryder, and he is a guy with experience, the senior in the receiving corps, the only senior that we have. He is a former 4-star from Florida as well, as we've had some success recruiting in the Sunshine State. He was good as a sophomore, or as a freshman, where he had 5 touchdowns. Ever since then, though, he's kind of taken a back seat. Only 4 catches last year. He did record a touchdown. 551 as a sophomore. Didn't find the end zone. But Ryder's got some experience, and he's pretty solid, I would say. He's reliable. He can also be a deep threat. I think he's pretty decent in the slot as well. So I think Gallegos and Ryder will be a pretty good 1-2 punch. But it will be a balanced effort on the offense. As behind him, it's pretty questionable. Frank McCord is a junior. He'll have a chance to be the 3rd wide receiver. He's a 3-star from Ainer, South Carolina. I don't think he's ever recorded a catch in his career. He has not. He's been mostly on kickoff duties, as he had a couple of returns in his career. But he'll have a chance now to be the third wide receiver. And then after that, it's nothing but freshmen. There's true freshman Derek Beck from North Carolina, a 4-star recruit, and I have a lot of hype around with that 99 speed. He is a true freshman. He'll have a chance as well. I expect him to find the field a little bit. There's also Deacon Hajru-Lahu, who is the cousin of former Gamecock John Hajru-Lahu, who transferred out, but he also finds himself in a Gamecock uniform. Terrell Benshaw as well, Pat Cameron, Coco Wilkerson, Lamont Babineau. It's a pretty question mark group after the top two. We'll see how that plays out. At tight end, we're also down our top two guys, so it's going to be up to the redshirt freshman Danny Cribbs to step in. He'll get the opportunity at 6'2", 230. He's a former 4-star recruit from Harrisburg, North Carolina. So he will be tasked with being the new tight end of this team. He's got some pretty solid speed. He's smaller for a tight end, so I don't expect him to be the best blocker. But hopefully his hands can hold up, because we've had some spottiness at the tight end position in terms of the hands ability. But he's got 82 catching traffic and 81 catching, so that's pretty solid. Number 2 tight end is kind of up for grabs. There's true freshman Tyrell Proctor, as well as Thomas Bono will have a chance, as well as Air Force transfer Pat Colombo, who could fill in as well if you want a redshirt Proctor and Bono. Then we get to the offensive line, which is the strength of this offense, I will say. Artie Big Hill is our impact guy. He's going to be the left tackle for Shaquille Brock. I expect him to block the blind side well. I also expect a lot of runs to go to his side of the field. So I think Ari Big Hill will be the staple of this line. At left guard, there's Ahmad Jacobson, who will step in after the graduation of Davion Merriman. Even though he's listed as the top left guard, I'm not sure if he will be the starter day one. I kind of want to shuffle some of these linemen around just to kind of maximize some of the guys. But he might find the field some this season. At center, we lost Colombo, but we have Shaquem Cruz as the top center. He will be the starter this year. The junior from Kings Mountain, North Carolina, will get the chance, and I think he'll thrive. He's a good pass blocker, should help up the middle, get Brock some time. I think he'll do a good job there. There's also Keelan Rugamba, who saw some time last year at right tackle. He might be the guy that we kick over to left guard to start the season. He's also a good pass blocker, a good power kind of guy. So I think he deserves to get the field. So those will be the 2 starters. There's also Steven Slaughter, who we got in the transfer portal, the junior, who's pretty solid. And then we have senior Nicholas Thrash as well. At right guard, Kevin Fine returns, one of the 2 offensive linemen who returned from last year's team. He was pretty solid. I think he was the weakest of the offensive line, but that's not saying, he was bad, because we have such a strong offensive line. So I think Kevin Fine will do pretty solid. You can see very much depth here at the guard position. We are, I think, going to be good here for years to come. At right tackle, Jeremy Ring is the top guy, the true freshman from Arden, North Carolina. He is a 4-star. Putting a true freshman at tackle could be a little bit of a risk, which is why I'm also thinking of maybe putting Rugamba out here and just leaving Jacobson at left guard. Got a lot to think about at the offensive line, so, we'll see what happens. There's also a transfer, Sam Nielsen, who has starting experience. So if we don't feel like throwing the freshman out there, there is Nielsen from Wake Forest, who could come over and start. He has a couple of years starting experience over there. He returns back to South Carolina. So that's the offense. I think offensive lines are strength. Get to the defense. We'll start with the defensive line, where we have some guys who kind of stepped up in the spring. Andy Everett down here at left end. He's the top-rated guy. He's a sophomore, even ahead of senior Greg Bodden. That's pretty impressive. 6'3", 221. He will be a pass rusher. I could see him having a breakout year. The former 4-star from Baltimore, Maryland, could get around the edge with a 93 speed. I'm excited to see what Andy Everett can do, because I think he could really be a boss for this team. Now, there's also Greg Bodden behind him, so I expect him to also play a lot. So I don't think he's going to find the bench. He's got the stars, so he's an impact player, and he's been a part of this defense for a couple of years. Has been very good. So Greg Bodden will also see it plenty of time. He was another guy we got in the transfer portal from LSU. He had 9 sacks his first year, 10 as well last year. Another good rusher. So I think we are pretty solid set at end. There's also redshirt freshman Dave Kiernan, who I'm also excited for in the future. At right end, Enrique Leal and Caleb Cottrell are out there. They're the top 2 guys. Even though Leal's ahead, I think Cottrell will get the benefit of the doubt between these 2. He had a really good season last year. 12 sacks for him off the edge. Stepped in well for Abena Nwuka. And with us switching to a 4-2-5 defense this year with a new coordinator, I think Caleb Cottrell and having that speed on the outside is very beneficial. Maybe Enrique Leal slides inside a little bit because I do think we're a little bit weaker at defensive tackle, which if you look at this, we're still pretty strong there as well. James Funk heads the group, the redshirt junior who found some time last year on the field. He ended up with 9 tackles for a loss, 5.5 sacks. We also have Angel Casey at defensive tackle, who got also a lot of sacks last year. He racked up 10.5. So good depth there. Then there's also Earl Groupie, who might be my favorite of the bunch. As a freshman last year, I thought he did good in a rotational role. A former 5-star recruit in his own right. Came away with a sack last year as well. So we are really deep at the defensive line. And I think we're going to have to rely on them pretty heavy to start this season, because I don't know about the other levels. I think I got a little bit of concerns there. We'll move to the linebacker position. We're at left outside linebacker, senior Maurice Bone will have a chance. He's got that 99 play rec. He's a smart player. He studied the playbook for a couple of years, and I think he's ready for this spot. Now, the only thing that scares me is that speed is a 76 speed. So if we do go to nickel packages, I think Maurice Bone will probably be the guy who comes off the field. Middle linebacker is Torrey Perkins. That one's the given of the defense. He's been there for quite a long time. Another former 5-star recruit from Georgia. Coming off back-to-back 100 tackle seasons, 3 interceptions last year. He mans the middle of the field. I think he does it pretty well. There's also John Telfort there as well, who's really speedy. Just have to see if he can get his coverage up. Now, right outside linebacker is also Troy Haslam, who was kind of the third linebacker last year. This year will probably be asked to be the second. I don't know how much of a good coverage guy he is, which kind of scares me a little bit because he's more of a get after the quarterback kind of role. He had a sack last year, but didn't really put up big numbers on the field. So I'm worried about who that second linebacker is going to be. Maybe we also go with a guy like Juan Coxie. If you look at some of the other guys, Ricky Prescott did pretty decent when he found some field last year. I mentioned Telfort, so we'll have to see who becomes that second linebacker this season. Now we head to the secondary, which was kind of a sore spot last year. And this year, we lost a couple of players. James Eskridge was the number 1 corner last year. He came over from being a safety. I thought he did okay, all things considered. He got off to a shaky start, but I thought he ended the season pretty solid. He had 4 interceptions. He did pretty good for being a safety convert. But he is more of an inside corner in the slot. So who's that means going to play outside? Well, Malik Asante did last year. He graduated. Now the freshmen are going to be asked to do some. We're now sophomores. Miles Filipovic was a slot guy last year. He'll probably be asked to play the outside, and as well as Jaleel Griggs. And I think one thing that might change this year is I think we might play a lot more man coverage. Filipovic and Griggs kind of specialize in that regard. Eskridge is a pretty solid man corner as well. And if you look at the zone, they're not as good, so we might play a little bit more man this year, which is a little scary in my opinion because I feel more comfortable playing zone. But we got to play to our strengths, and right now our strengths are in the man coverage. There's also Eric Merrick, who we got in the transfer portal. I can see him finding some time as well. Then we go to safety, where we lost 3 safeties to graduation, including free safety Danny Kaufman. So we'll have to see who steps up for him. And right now the number 1 guy is going to be redshirt freshman Mohammed Ha from Georgia, a former 3-star recruit who has pretty solid development. I think he's deserved the chance to start. His coverage skills are a little spotty to me. The zone was better, though, with an 83. But he's not the fastest either, so that scares me a little bit. There's also Kai Magnum, who we got a couple of years ago, 5'11", 200. He's a little bit faster. There's Devon Davis as well, who I think will be the future at safety. I think I want him maybe not playing as much this season. He's a little raw, but he's fast. He's got better man coverage, so I think he'll find the field at some point this year. But it will be Mohammed Ha who starts at free safety first. And strong safety, Chauncey Parkey does return. He was the starter last year. He was kind of spotty to begin the year. Did better down the stretch. But we were susceptible to the deep ball last year. And Chauncey Parkey definitely gave up his fair share of those. In his first year as a starter, he recorded 1 interception. I'm hoping he has a better junior or senior campaign. There's also Raheem Laybourne. He played some nickel linebacker last year, and at 6'3", maybe he'll be asked to play that position again this year. So that could also be an option for us. There's also freshman Frank Kennedy. At kicker, it'll be Marquise Otogwe, who's now a senior. He's been pretty solid. He was a little shaky last year as a junior, but, he's a pretty solid kicker. And that punter, it'll still be sophomore Andres B. So that is the 2030 South Carolina Gamecocks. Now we'll take a look at some of the other teams to look out for in the 2030 season. Starting off with the SEC, you have to start with the defending national champions, number 1 ranked Auburn, who won it for the first time in 19 years last year, led behind Frederick Pruitt at quarterback, and a good team. But they do have to replace Pruitt. He went number 1 overall, but it's still a very talented team. I think this year they'll be led by their defense. Left end Marquise Beard, who had 2.5 sacks last year, 15.5 as a sophomore, is now back as a senior. And then Chad Kohler, the Wisconsin transfer, should help the defense, despite the fact he might miss the first week of the season. The second highest ranked team in the SEC is number 5, Texas, who finished 9-4 last year. And they're led by their offense, specifically their ground game. They have a very good run game, led by left guard Shaq Sly, the former 5-star from Red Oak, Texas. He will be blocking for the halfback Shakir Condren, who is also a former 5-star from Orange, California. The Longhorns should be able to ground and pound the football. Number 6, right behind them, though, is the Oklahoma Sooners, who went 9-5 last year. They made the playoff after losing the SEC Championship game, but they lost in round 1 to Oregon. Very good team. They were number 1 at one point last year. They've been consistent throughout their tenure in the SEC. They're led by former 5-star corner Terrell McNabb from OKC. Georgia comes in at number 8, the 2028 national champions from just 2 years ago. They went 9-4 last year, and they could have made the playoff, but they were one of the first teams left out, and that was a blessing for the rest of the field. They'll be led by corner George Quintero, a former 5-star from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, had 4 picks last season. Then we get into this next level of SEC teams, led by number 16, Kentucky, who went 9-4 last year, and seems like they're in that little Kentucky window that happens from time to time where they get a pretty solid team, and we'll see if they can do anything, lift it. Their best player is left tackle Stephon Elkins from Bellwood, Michigan. Then at number 18, there's the 8-5 Arkansas Razorbacks, who have been known to make a couple upsets in the conference, push that top 10 envelope a little bit. You know, they have a solid team led by halfback Brian Powell, who's been getting a lot of hype out there in Razorback country. Had 4 touchdowns last year. Some think he could even be a Heisman candidate this season. Then we get into the unranked teams in the SEC, but honestly, the biggest dark horse could be this team right here, LSU. They went 8-5 last year, but they have a very talented team that's matured nicely, and they're led by halfback Juan Biggers, who rushed for 1,000 yards last year and 10 touchdowns. He is a stout halfback. On the defense, you got linebacker Kevin Lopez, who had 8 sacks last year off the edge, and he can cover. But the key for the Tigers might be the quarterback. Jimmy Boone's going to get a chance to start. You know, there's a lot of hype around him. We'll see if he can lead the Tigers to the SEC Championship. Tennessee, the 2026 national champions, are there. They went to the national championship game 2 years in a row, won one of them, but have kind of hit a little bit of a slippery slope recently, went 8-5 last year. But again, like LSU, this team could be a dark horse. They got their trademark speed receiver in Trevante Way, who had 8 touchdowns last year. On the defense, they're led by former 5-star Steven Azuma from Alabama, who has 24 career sacks. In the secondary, you have Jaden Tobias, who had 3 interceptions last year. So they got playmakers at all levels. Then you got Mississippi State, who had a surprising year last year. They went 8-5, finally got out of the doldrums. I don't think this is the most talented team, but you got to give it up for the Bulldogs for winning 8 games last year. You know, their top player is linebacker George Droogsma, the former walk-on, who's been a great story, now a captain of that defense. Missouri Tigers went 8-5 last year. They came in with a lot of hype. A lot of people thought they might be a top 10 team. They did not live up to it. They're still a very good team, specifically on the ground. They have halfbacks, one of the best tandems in the country, in Linval Humphreys and Silas Boutte, and they got one of the best right guards in J.R. Angel blocking for him. Ole Miss went 6-6 last year. One of those wins was against us, however, and they have a pretty good team, I think. Could take that next step this year. I can see them winning maybe 8, maybe 9 games, led by wide receiver Anthony Chisena, who has 19 career touchdowns in a Rebels uniform. And throwing in the football will be Hasheem West, who was a limited starter last year, but he played pretty well. Also started as a freshman, threw 17 touchdowns, has plenty of experience as a senior quarterback. Texas A&M's been in a little bit of a rut. They went 6-6 last year. They did not make a bowl game, surprisingly enough. They have a good pair of edge rushers, but this is still a talented team. Anytime you still got to go into Kyle Field, it's going to be difficult. And you do not want to face the Aggies on the road. They're led by a great pair of pass rushers in Ezekiel Appa and Virgil Vigil, who will definitely try to squeeze the pocket on whatever quarterback they step against. It has definitely been a not good era in the post-Saban era of Alabama Crimson Tide football, coming off a 5-7 season. But maybe there is some light at the end of the tunnel for the Crimson Tide. They have some key players, some solid pieces. Quarterback Tompkins will get the chance this year. You got Carl Hargrove anchoring that offensive line. On the defensive line, you have Lee Lord, who had 6 sacks last year as a junior. Speaking of down teams, you got the Gators, who went 5-7 last year. It's not been a good couple of seasons down there in the swamp. Hopefully they can get back out of it. They do have a good pass rusher piece to anchor them in Angel Labinho, who had 10.5 sacks last year, 21.5 career. So hopefully they can get something out of him as a senior and win some games. Then finally, in the bottom of the SEC is the usual culprit, the 3-9 Vanderbilt Commodores, who had a pretty decent year 2 years ago, but then last year fell back to 3-9. They are the doormat of the SEC. But that being said, you still don't want to take them lightly. They're led by right guard Terrence Lemon. Now we'll go to the other Power 4 conferences, starting off in the ACC, where the top team here is the number 7 ranked Miami Hurricanes, the 2027 national champions who won the ACC last year. They got eliminated in the quarterfinals last year in the playoff, and we'll see how they do this year. Obviously, a very loaded team, one of the favorites in the ACC, Damian Reyna, who had 2 interceptions and 85 tackles on the defensive side. Also, Anthony Mingo. Expect him to have a breakout season, in my opinion. Then on the offense, you have Stephen Hollings, who had 992 yards, 6 touchdowns last year, 1,000 as a sophomore. A good team out there in Miami. Behind him are the NC State Wolfpack, a team we saw last year in the Gator Bowl and actually beat. They finished the year 8-6. We'll see them again this year as well. This is a talented NC State program. They've been a top echelon team in the ACC, but have yet to get over that hump. Iosifa Sammy will anchor the secondary once more. Then J.J. Hillhouse, who last year had 10.5 sacks after having 19.5 as a sophomore. It's going to be tough to play them this year. Now, number 20 is the SMU Mustangs, who, in my opinion, had the most quiet 10-win season of the year last year. They went 10-3 and didn't really get a lot of recognition, in my opinion. Their best player is wide receiver Connor Avery, who had 4 touchdowns last year as a sophomore. Then we get to the number 23 ranked team in the country, and it's the Clemson Tigers, our most hated rival. We have not had a lot of success against. We are 1-5 against Clemson in this series. They're gearing up for another talented season after going 8-5 last year. Halfback Josh Kamienski, who had 11 touchdowns last year, will be a problem. Hopefully we can beat Clemson this season. Now, they're not ranked, but I do want to talk about the Florida State Seminoles because I think they're on the come up, and this is a huge year for them in the ACC. I won't say too much about that, but Florida State will definitely be the talk of the college football world this season. They're coming off an 8-5 year, and they could be their chance to be a team to wreck with in the ACC. We'll go to the Big 12 now, who in my opinion it's just a 2-team race, the same 2 teams I hyped up last year. At number 13, you got the Utah Utes, who made the playoff last year. They lost in the quarterfinal to the national champion Auburn Tigers. But they come off an 11-4 season. They are the highest ranked team in the Big 12, led by pass rusher Randy Gooch. But one spot behind them at number 14 is the TCU Horned Frogs, who actually did win the Big 12 championship last year. They lost in the semifinals to Auburn. So both the top 2 teams lost to the Tigers. In my opinion, it'll probably be a coin flip just like last year between these 2 teams as to see who comes out in the Big 12. They have a nice captain of the defense in J.P. Tobias. Then we'll get to maybe the best conference in college football, the Big Ten. They have been steady throughout the entire tenure of this series. But the highest ranked team is not who you expect. It's number 2, Rutgers, who have been very good in this series thus far. They made the playoff again last year, lost in the quarterfinals to TCU. But right when you count out the Scarlet Knights, they come in and they do something like make the playoff. Now, number 3 is the Washington Huskies, who had a very good year last year, going 11-3 and won the Big Ten. They do have a lot of talent to replace, including their quarterback Marquise Kennedy. So we'll see if they can get back to the quarterfinal where they lost to Western Kentucky. But they do have a nice pass rusher in Alex Volbaugh, who had 12 sacks last year. At number 4 is probably the team who could win the conference, the Oregon Ducks, the 2025 national champions. They were the best team earlier in this series, but have been in a little bit of a slump. They made it all the way to the semis last year. They lost to Western Kentucky, and they have not forgot about that loss. Very talented team. You got Kevin Whitaker, a former 5-star who had 15.5 sacks last year. Another former 5-star and linebacker Warren Wooten. And then on the right guard spot, Tyrone Pilgrim, who could anchor that offensive line. So the Ducks are a very talented team to watch out for. Number 9, you got the Michigan Wolverines coming off a 9-4 season for them. And they're not the flashiest team. They're just going to do what Michigan does, and that's just beat you in the trenches. They have arguably the best pound-for-pound player in college football this year at right guard in Ben Prozinski, who's never allowed a career sack. Two spots behind them are the number 11 Ohio State Buckeyes, the 2024 national champions, the first ever national champions here in this series, who in my opinion could be gearing up for another run at that spot. They have talent. Linebacker Dylan Washington, a former 5-star from the DMV area, is going to get a chance to shine this year. At halfback, you have Jackie Ferris, another former 5-star. But the key comes down to quarterback, Iosifa Duff, the former Syracuse Orange, who's been okay as a quarterback for the Buckeyes, but if they want to get back to the national championship, he's going to have to play well. Now, number 12 is the UCLA Bruins that finished the season 9-4 last year. This could be the most talented team that UCLA has had. Now, I do think 12 is a little bit high for them, but I'm happy for them. They could definitely cause some trouble in the Big Ten, led by linebacker Jameel Pettigrew. Now, number 15, you have the Wisconsin Badgers, who in my opinion have been very gracious with their rankings the past couple of seasons. They went 8-6 last year, made the playoff 2 years ago as a 5-loss team. I don't think they deserve to be number 15, but the polls always seem to disagree with me. In terms of their football game, it's going to be what you expect of Wisconsin football, and that's run it. At number 25, rounding out the rankings, is the Nebraska Cornhuskers, who are probably their most talented team since they moved to the Big Ten. They finished 7-6 last year, but there's some talent here. They have one of the best tight ends in the conference, Danny Hendricks, coming off of a 5-touchdown season. And then on defense, you have Damian Corral, who had 79 tackles as a sophomore. I can see Nebraska causing some trouble there in the Big Ten. Now, they're not in a Power 4 conference, but you got to talk about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They're the number 24 team this year. They might as well be in a Power 4 conference, coming off an 8-5 season. They have probably the most talented player on offense at wide receiver, Gil Condon. 1,000 yards last year, 17 touchdowns, 1,100 yards as a sophomore, 20 touchdowns. He will be a top 3 pick come the NFL draft, in my opinion. And throwing the football is Nick Kinney, the quarterback who threw for 43 touchdowns last year, who could be the first quarterback off the board this coming draft. We'll get into the group of 5 now. We'll start off in the American, which is usually the best conference. And at number 17, you have the Tulane Green Wave coming off a 10-win season where they made the playoff, but they lost in the first round to the Hilltoppers of Western Kentucky. Solid team again this year. I think they can win the American Conference behind Rakeem Ringo at defensive end. But then at number 22, you got North Texas, who's been very good the past couple of seasons. They also made the playoff last year before getting beat in the first round by Utah. And they would be my pick to repeat as champions, but their quarterback, Antoine Catula, will miss the season with a torn pectoral. A huge blow for a talented North Texas team. Move over to the Conference USA, where obviously you got to talk about Western Kentucky. I mean, their run last year all the way to the national championship where they lost to Auburn, going 14 wins on the campaign. I don't think they'll do it again, but I do think they are the best group of 5 team out there, so I think they'll make the playoff again. They're led by defensive end Darren Montgomery, had 15 sacks last year as a junior. The MAC conference is usually always kind of a crapshoot, so this year I'm going to pick Western Michigan to come out of this conference. They went 9-4 last year, and probably the reason why I'm picking them is because I think they have the best quarterback in the conference in Jamie Luter, who threw for 3,000 yards last year, 21 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, and I think as a senior, those stats will definitely go better. So I'm going to pick the Broncos in the MAC. The Mountain West is also kind of a crapshoot. I'm going to pick UTEP, though, who won the conference in their first season a couple of years ago since joining the Mountain West. They went 4-8 last year, so that's not the most, hype team to get behind. But I think they're a pretty solid team. I think they're overall pretty decent. I think the Mountain West is probably the weakest conference in college football anyway. So they have that going for them as well. In the Pac-12, I'm going to pick Boise State. They went 5-7 last year, but I can't pick Oregon State to win the Pac-12 because they always dominate the regular season, and they always choke in the Pac-12 championship. So I'll give it to Boise State this year. I think last year was an anomaly. I think they'll get back to the Pac-12 championship this year. I don't know if they'll make the playoff, though, but I think they should win the conference. And then finally, the final team we'll talk about is in the Sun Belt. We'll go to Appalachian State, the Mountaineers, who went 8-5 last year. They've kind of been the staple of the Sun Belt. They didn't make the Sun Belt championship last year, though. Louisiana Monroe and Marshall beat them out, but I think they'll get back to it this season. They're led by the hometown kid at linebacker in Steve Turpin to lead them. So those are the highlights of the season. Let me know in the comment section below who you think has a chance to make the championship this season. Here's a look at the top 25. You saw them in those previews, but here they are from 1 to 25 sequential order. We come in ranked number 21 this year, so again, some respect. And now we'll take a look at the schedule and show what teams will be playing this season. We'll start off in week number 1 against our FCS team. We're going to say this is actually Furman this year, so we'll play Furman in week number 1. Then in week 2, we'll stay at home against East Carolina to face the Pirates from the AAC before also ending non-conference play against NC State in a Gator Bowl rematch. And the Wolfpack have been a good team the past couple of seasons, so it will be difficult to beat them again. Then we'll head on the road for a few games to begin conference play, and our conference schedule is pretty tough this year. We'll head to Kroger Field first to face Kentucky. Remember the last time we went there, we lost on a Hail Mary. Then we'll go to Tennessee to face the Volunteers, who have a little bit of a down, a little bit in the middle of a valley after 2 national championship appearances, but it's still recent. And then speaking of national champions, we'll face the national champions Auburn Tigers in Jordan-Hare Stadium before ending the 4-game gauntlet against the Arkansas Razorbacks, who were a fringe top 10 team last season. Then we return home, but it's not going to get any easier when we host the Georgia Bulldogs. So the Bulldogs will be on the docket, the national champions from 2 years ago. Then we'll finally get a much-needed bye week before getting to the second stretch of the season, where we'll start at home against the Florida Gators, who have been struggling recently, as well as Mississippi State, who rounded off an 8-win season last year, which is very good from the Bulldogs stretch. Then we have a home game against the Texas Longhorns before ending the year at Clemson Memorial Stadium. So definitely a tougher schedule than we had the past couple of seasons. We'll see how the Gamecocks can manage it. But that's going to do it for this one. Next episode, we will start the 2030 season and probably take a look at some of the recruits as well and get through week number 1. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you drop that like and subscribe down below, especially if you want more Dynasty Mode content. This is Mr. Rob, and I'll see you in the next one.